session of the Azure Challenge, and today we are starting a new series on the Azure administration. And the first topic we'll be treating today is Administer Identity. So welcome. I hope you enjoyed the Azure DevOps series, and let's get right into this one. So today we have with us Mr. Popola Isiaka. We'll be taking the Azure Identity topic. And first, I'd just like to say a few things about our tutor today. Number one thing is that he's a Microsoft certified trainer, so you know that you're in for the best time. And he's an IT professional. He has 10 years experience in business intelligence, database management, cloud computing. So he's here to teach us today on how to manage identity in Azure. And if you know Azure, you know that identity is the gateway man to every resource that you have on Azure. So I'm welcoming Mr. Popola to take over from me. So Popola, are you ready for us?
Yes, Dami. How are you, Dami?
I'm fine, and you, sir?
Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Okay.
Good
We are glad to
afternoon,
have you.
good evening, and good morning, the audience from any part of the world that we are hearing us live. We are in Nigeria. My moderators in Nigeria, myself, I'm in Nigeria. If by Nigerian style, I will say good afternoon. But by the virtue of the fact that people are watching us across the world, so wherever you are, I greet you according to the time that you are located. So, Popola Isiaka is my name. I am Microsoft certified trainer. I have more than 10 years experience working on IT-related products. I am major in data. I'm major in data, and by major in data, with special interest on data platform, I have built my capacity over the years on issues around data analytics, on issues around data engineering, and on issues around database administrator. So all my life, for more than 10 years, I've been living on data, drinking, sleeping, and dancing with data. So it is my pleasure to be your guest speaker on the commencement of a new section that will be taken in the next few weeks, which has to do with AZ-100, AZ-100, and which has to do with what? With how do we? I mean AZ-104, AZ-104, which has to do with Azure Administrator, Microsoft Azure Administrator. It is one of the beautiful courses that I have learned over the years, and I'm very sure that you will surely enjoy it because it's like the hub. AZ-104 is like the hub of learning and understanding the cloud computing service of Microsoft, courtesy of Microsoft Azure. So in the course of this training, my assignment is to take you through the rudiments of some of the things that you need to know in a AZ-104, which has to do with what? Identity management. So in the course of this training, I'll be taking us through what we call identity management and what are the advantage and what are the benefits that we can derive from it. So let me quickly share my slide, just a minute, so that we can also be on the same page. Can you confirm, Dami, can you confirm you can see my screen? Hello, Dami. Hello. Okay, you can see my screen. That's fine. That is fantastic. All right. So this course is AZ-104, like I did mention, and what we are taking us through today is administering identity. Administering identity. All right. So let me quickly try to show few things about what we intend to learn. So in administering identity, we are going through two major objectives. The first objective, configure Azure Active Directory and also configure user and group and accounts. Those are the two core objectives under this administration on administering identity. So we'll be looking at how do we configure Azure Active Directory and how do we configure user and group accounts. So in the course of this training, we get to know um, the importance of these two objectives as regard identity management. All right, please happy stay tuned as we move together. All right, so in configuring Active Directory, configure has to do with what? Configuration and active Azure Active Directory. There are three keywords from this frame that we are seeing, this page we are seeing. We have what we call configure, we have what we call Azure, and we have what we call Active Directory. So from the word of configure, that is, you want to do some configuration setting in order to use a service. And what is that service? That service is Azure. And what is Azure? Azure is one of the products of Microsoft. That is what is known about cloud service. So Azure is what? It's a cloud-based service that has to do with what? With a cloud configuration. Then another word is what? Active Directory. By the time we are talking Active Directory, from the English word directory, what does a directory do? A directory is where we have an active element. It can be a directory of name, it can be a directory of contact, it can be a directory of service. A directory is just like a what? A database. We have a directory, and like we have an active directory, like we have an active a database in the cloud that help us to do what? Some kind of service. By the time we go deeper, we get to know how does this active directory relate to Azure and how do we configure it. So in the course of this training, as regard the first objective, we'll be looking at describe Azure Active Directory benefits and features, describe Azure AD concept, compare AD/DS to Azure Active Directory, implement self-service password reset, and if I have some other resources, I will share with us. All right, in the course of um, describing what is Azure Active Directory, I've given you a layman definition of what is a directory. A directory is just like a database that houses a lot of information about a particular purpose. That is the basic layman. But in terms of Active Directory in relation to Azure, we can define an Active Directory as a cloud-based suite of identity management capabilities that enables you to securely manage assets to Azure services and resources for your what? Or for your users. Now, there are two keywords again that we have to what? We have to take note. That's what we call Azure services, and that's what we call Azure resources. Now, in the course of Active Directory, we want to make use it as an opportunity to access a cloud-based suite of management identity, which are what? Which are embedded in Microsoft Azure services and resources. There are a lot of Azure services and there are a lot of Azure resources, but you cannot access them. You know, I've defined it as a cloud-based service. You cannot access them. You cannot access what? Azure services and Azure resources by a user without having an identity that will give you a permission to access it. No, in a layman, I've described what? A directly like a what? A database. Now, if you have a database of something, and in database, that database has a password or has a key to enter it. Does anybody that does not has a key enter it? No, it is not possible. It's like now that ASU has just resumed their work services in tertiary institutions, especially universities in Nigeria. If you are not a student of a university, the resumption of ASU may not have any meaning with you. But because you belong to a system, which Azure is like a system now that has a lot of services and what resources. A tertiary education system is like also is like also an institution that has what a lot of services and what and resources. So If you don't belong to that institution, you cannot have access to what? Services. You cannot have access to what? Resources being provided by that institution. And that is a layman definition of what I would call. But in this case, we are looking more at what? A cloud-based service, a cloud-based resources, courtesy of what? Microsoft Azure services and resources. Now, what Active Directory in Azure also does is that it provides application management, authentication, device management, and hybrid identity. If somebody asks you, okay, from the basic definition of Active Directory in Azure that we have understood from this discussion, okay, what are the benefits? What service does it offer? Now, what is offered is that what? It provides application management. That access that we have into that Active Directory help us to make use of what? Application management, authentication, device management, and hybrid identity. It's like a database, and that's what it does. If you look at the diagram I have at the right hand side, you can see on-premises applications. By the time we say on-premises, these are the things that we have on our laptop, on our desktop, that are domiciled on our desktop. Now, we now want to access something, and that case we call it what? As local. Can you see we have two sides of it? We have the local resources. We have local resources. And we have what? We have cloud-based resources. So the applications we have on our system, the software we have on our system, all things we have on our system, they are what? They are on-premise apps. But in case of cloud service, Microsoft has come up with a lot of cloud services. And major of them, the two major of them are what? Office 365, which is a cloud-based service. And the second one is about Azure, maybe Azure applications, Azure what? Azure resources. So now we are not talking about an identity that can give you an opportunity to have access to what is on premise, and also have access to what is in the cloud service. So for the local side, for the local side of it, we make use of what? For people that are using Microsoft, that are used to Microsoft Server, in the olden days, Microsoft Windows servers. So they make use of Microsoft Windows Server to achieve Active Directory in the local based, which is on-premises applications. But in the time of cloud-based services, we now make use of what? We now make use of Azure Active Directory. Please get it right. In the case of on-premises applications, we make use of Windows Server Active Directory. And in the case of cloud-based services, we make use of what? Active Directory. So, and what does it do? They are like, and it gives us an identity authorization. By the time we are talking about identity, we are talking about what we call, by the time we are talking about identity, we are talking about authentication. There's another thing that is related to authentication. There's also something that's related to authentication, which is what? Authorization. Yes, identity is similar to what? Authentication. That look, you want to enter into a database. If you don't have an identity, maybe you are a database administrator. If you don't have, your identity can be your password, maybe your username and password. That's an identity. Popola is my name. Maybe my username is my email address, or maybe my username is what? My email address. But my password is maybe 12345. That is what? Combination of my username and what? And my password make my identity known. That wherever you see this name, wherever you see this username, and wherever you see this password, that implies that it is popular, that want to have access to that database. So identity has to do with what? Authentication. That whenever this combination of password and what? And the email are together, then they authenticate, they identify that the person, I'm asking the system to identify that that person is automatically popular, which has access to the database. Or maybe it's an institution. Okay, popular has access to that institution. That's about what? Authentication. There's also what we call authorization. In the course of this discussion, we get to know the difference between authentication and authorization. But let me quickly state it. In terms of, I've mentioned about authentication, which has to do with identity, that somebody has access to this. That is authentication. But authorization is if I have access, like this ASU, I want to make use of ASU because it's a recent case in Nigeria. Because I belong to maybe a university now, uh, maybe University of Lagos, where I'm giving this lecture at the moment, because I happen to be part of participant at DataFest, and I'm making use of this facility from that institution at the moment, where DataFest is holding. Now, if, for instance, by being inside that institution does not make me to have access to the student facilities, the authentication is that, okay, whether I'm a public person, whether I'm a student person, I have access to the what? To the university community, maybe to come for an event. But that does not mean, in the case of separating public from people that actually belong to the academic community, that I have benefits, I have access to what? To what students can, can benefit. For instance, maybe research portal, maybe research portal. Because I live, because I stay, because I'm presently inside that university, does not give me right to access what? The research portal, because what? I am not authorized. Because why am I not authorized? Because I am not an enrolled student in the institution. And that's how what operates in the cloud service also happens. That because you have access does not mean, because you have access maybe to a cloud service, maybe a database, for instance, maybe SQL database now, because I have access to database does not mean I have access to everything that are available in the database. So, for instance, now, if I have access to Microsoft Azure, that, or I have access to Microsoft Office 365, because those are the two components of the cloud services that what that are provided by Microsoft. These are the two broad categories. We have Microsoft Office and we have what? Microsoft Azure. Now, if I have access, maybe I belong to a company. Now, let me now relate it to people that are working in organization. Maybe I'm a staff of an organization. Because I'm a staff, I will have been enrolled by maybe my staff ID. It means that I can have access to some facilities within that organization. Because I have access to organization, that does not mean I have access to everything that are available within the organization. That is where the area of authorization now come. For instance, now people in the HR, maybe they have some softwares they make use of. Of course, if I'm not in the if I'm not in the HR department, I will not be authorized to make use of facilities that are majorly for the people in what? HR department. All right, so let us proceed. We get to understand it better. All right, so um, in the concept of describing AD, wherever you see AD, it means what? Active Directory. So in the concept of describing Azure directory, Azure Active Directory, there are major things that we need to know. The first thing is what we call identity. By the time we are talking about identity, we are talking about an object. By the time we are talking about identity, we are talking about an object that can be what? Authenticated. The major purpose of identity is for what? Authentication. For somebody now that is a driver, you are driving on Nigeria road, it is an offense that you are not having a driver's license. By the time you show your identity to maybe security operatives on the road that this is your national driver's license, it means that the identity has information about yourself and the permission that you can drive on Nigeria road. Now, it now comes with authentication. Because I have access to that ID card, then I have been authenticated as a driver on Nigeria road. Now, that's what we know about any object that can be authenticated. That's an identity as a concept under what? Active Directory. Or Active Directory. All right, the next thing is about what? Account. An identity has data associated with it. Now, you cannot make use of Azure services without having an account. And this account is what we majorly known as what? Uh, it has data that's associated with it. An account is maybe if my account is being created as a staff now, maybe I'm a staff of a company and my identity is being created, it has to be, they have to open an account for me. Like an account is just like a file. That this file belongs to Popola, and that file cannot be what? Cannot be empty. The file has to contain information about myself, maybe about my first name, about my last name, about my middle name, maybe about my age, maybe about my department, maybe about people that I'm responsible to, that I'm directly under their supervisions. That's what information about an account. It has data associated with what? With an identity. The Azure Active AD account. All right, an identity created through Azure AD or another Microsoft Cloud service. So there's a what? There's a difference between what we call an account and Azure Active Directory account. Now, in the Azure Active Directory account, it has to be domiciled within Azure Active AD on another Microsoft Cloud service. And I've mentioned that there are two major cloud services by what? By Microsoft, which is what? An Azure and what? And what? Office 365. Microsoft M365. Microsoft 365. All right, so there's also another concept that is known as what? Azure AD tenant and directory. Azure AD tenant and directory. A dedicated and trusted instance of Azure Active Directory, a tenant is automatically created when your organization signs up for a Microsoft Cloud Service subscription. Now, what do we call a tenant? A tenant usually is being related with what? A domain. A cloud is being related to a domain. And a domain is just like maybe a web address. Maybe the organization I work for is www.docsxyz.org. All right, that's our domain name. So each time that a domain name is being registered for what? For cloud services under Microsoft. A domain name that is being under a domain name is being registered under what? Under Microsoft Cloud Services. A tenant is assigned to each of the domain name. So of course, if you don't have a domain name, I mean, you can't have a tenant. That's the implication. If you don't have, because a domain has to do with what? With tenant. And you can only get tenant by registered organization that subscribe for cloud services under what? Microsoft services. So those are the common items. Additional instances of Azure AD can be created, and these are the benefits. All those items, additional instance of AD can be created. Azure AD is underlying product provided that identity service. The time tenant means a single instance of Azure AD representing a single organization. And how do we represent a single organization? Is by the web address of that organization, which is a domain name. So the terms tenant and directory are often used interchangeably. But I've explained the difference between the two. There's also what we call Azure subscription. Before you can have access to the services, because you can have access to the what? To the services, you must do what? You must do a subscription. For instance, now, if you are using a mobile data service, if you don't have data subscription, can you browse? Can you check anything with your phone? The answer is no. So there's a need for subscription before you can have access to what? To the data services you are having access to. So in terms of cloud service, there are a lot of cloud services that are embedded in what? In Azure. From a literature and from what is obtainable around the world. For the domain, for my area of specialization that has to do with data platform, we have more than 40 services. Yes, please go and confirm it. We have more than 40 cloud services that are embedded within Azure. Just only data. What of people that are developers? What are people that are what? Developers. Maybe application developers. And we have a lot of areas of operations that we have in what? In technology, in cloud technology. So if you don't have a subscription, you can't have access to some of these facilities. All right. Now, how do we select different editions? We have what we call free service. We have Azure Active Directory free service. We have Microsoft 365 apps. We have Premium P1. We have Premium P2. Now, if you look at the features, these are the facilities, or these are the functionalities that are available within Active Directory of Azure. Now, there are category. There are category. This is 1, this is 2, this is 3, this is what? This is 4. And this depends on the subscription level. The first one is free. And for free service, for Active Azure, for the Active Directory that is of Azure products, you only have access to 2 products, which are what? Directory objects and single sign-on. That's all. But if you only have subscription to what? To Office 365 apps, you also have access to what? To this. But if you come to premium, this one is what? Is subscription based. This one is also what? Subscription. This one is subscription based. This one is subscription based. This one is subscription based. It is only this one that is what? That is free. Now, the advantage of this is that if you are for free, you have access to this, you have access to this, you have access to this, you have access to this in terms of features. All right. But if it is this one you subscribe to, you have access to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 features. If it is premium P1, you have access to all this to this. And if it is premium P2, you have access from here to here. Of course, if you look for pricing, if you can go to Google and check Azure pricing, Azure subscription pricing, you can see the value of the premium subscription, maybe by month or by year, and what access you have. All right, that's what we call implement self-service password. All right, the first thing is to know about identity, which we have explained within the concept of what? Azure Active Directory. All right, so the first thing is to have an identity. For instance, now I belong to an organization. I have a staff ID. And on that staff ID, maybe if I want to enter the door of my organization, I have to flash my card. Maybe there's a chip that has been embedded in each one of the staff identity cards that we have in our organization. So I have to flash it. So now, for what we call identity, an identity has to get what? Has to get a password, which will give you an access. For instance, now in terms of email, my username is just like my student ID. No, it's my staff ID, just my email address. Then the second one is what? Is my password, because that is the key. So now, if a new identity is being created for a new user, there is a need for what? Password reset. Because in the process of creating an ID, an identity for a user, a password is attached to it. And in major cases, it can be that, okay, how will the person authenticate their identity? Is it by what? Is it by determining who can use it? Is it by what? Is it by email address? Is it by what? Is it by phone number? Or is it by asking questions? Sometimes when you are filling some forms, they will ask you some questions that you can only answer to the best of your ability and how they apply to you. All right. So these are the kinds of password reset authentication methods. Now, are you coming through email? Are you coming through? Can you see these options available? Are you coming through email? Are you coming through email for authentication? Are you coming through mobile for authentication? We have email, we have mobile, we have what? We have security questions. Security question can be, as a married man, where did you meet your spouse? That could be a question. Maybe in the configuration of my identity, they ask me, what could be my security question? I can now say, okay, where did you meet your spouse? And my answer is only known to me. Of course, if I didn't tell anybody, nobody can know where I met my spouse. All right. And then there's what we call in the password reset. There's also what we call MFA, that is multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication. In the course of it, we get to know later. All right. So now there is a Microsoft Learn platform. We call it Microsoft Learn. You can Google for it, and you can get to know more about resources that are available inside the first first objective that we have covered. Now we are now going to the second objective. By the time I'm done with second objective, we now do demo about how we can manage identity of users, of groups, of organizations. All right, let me quickly take us through this again. This is second objective: configure user and group account. All right, so in the course of this, we'll be looking at what? How do we create user account? Because user account is about what? It's an identity. Somebody belongs to an organization. We have to assign that person to the service of the organization. We have to create a username for the case for the person. Excuse me. So after we have created, then we can also manage user account. In the course of managing user account, we can now assign license that okay, this popular that is part of this organization, he has access to what? To email service of the organization. He has access to this particular software. He has access to what? And some other issues that has to do with licenses, which has to do with what? Authorization and come up. There's what we call create bulk account. That is, okay, maybe I'm working in an enterprise organization. An organization that is what? That is global. That okay, I now want to create, for instance, I'm working in an organization that has about 40,000 staff. That's even it's even small. Maybe 100,000 staff. Is it possible um to create what? User account for 100,000 person? It may be difficult. There's a provision for what? Create bulk account. That one is just to upload the record that you have for your what? For your staff, for you to have, for them to have access online in the cloud service. So create group accounts, assign licenses to users and groups, create administrative units, demonstrations, and these are the major concepts about the how do we configure users and group accounts. Let us take notes. Let us move ahead. All right, so to create users, we have to go online, and we have to log in into Azure portal. That's what we call Azure portal. We have to log in into the Azure portal, create users. These are the things that we are seeing the other time. There's what we call multi-factor authentication, MFA, the other time. There's what we call reset password. There's what we called a new user. There's what we call new guest user, and what have you. Now, in the course of creating user account, what are the benefits? All users must have an account. Yes, there's no staff of a company, or there's no somebody that belongs to an institution or a body that does not, that has an identity, that will not what? Have an account. That's the basic thing. All users, that is users of cloud services, must have what? An account. The account is used for what? Authentication and authorization. Yes, very fine. This is what I was saying the other time, that will come across this again. An account is used for what? Authentication. Authentication has to do with what? Identity. And authorization has to do with what? License. Because I have an authorization does not mean I have what? I have license to perform some operations. No. Authentication is for what? Identity, that I belong to this organization. You are welcome. That does not mean I have license. I'm authorized to use some particular activities. We get to know in the course of this training during the time of the demo. Then the third thing that we need to note under user account is that each user account has additional what? Additional properties. Yes, that we created a user does not mean that is all. There are a lot of what? Properties that are attributes of that user. Some of the properties that we can get to know at first hand is that okay, I belong to what? I belong to maybe data analytics team, because that is my favorite. Belong to data analytics team. That's a property. And in data analytics, what can I do? Maybe because I have background in database management, maybe I have access to what? To the SQL service. Maybe I'm authorized to have access to what? To the SQL service. Then there's some other properties that we say, okay, maybe I'm located, an organization that I'm working for is a global organization. Maybe I'm located in Nigeria. Those are particular properties that define who I am in the organization and the right that I have for services and operations that I do. There are a lot of quiet of properties when we go to demo, I will try to show us. For manage user account, there are a lot of things that we can manage. Must for whoever that will manage user account. That's what I'm saying again. For there's what we call global administrator. Global administrator is somebody that has authority to do almost everything within the cloud service. Yes, a global administrator, from the word global administrator, that person has the right, has authorization to assign license, to administer license, or to be what? The administrator of what? Of the users. So there's nobody that has opportunity to create user account that is not what? That is not a global administrator. All right. So, like organization that I work for, a remote organization that I work for, I am a global administrator. I'm also assigned a license as what? As a billing administrator. So by being a billing administrator, it is just that. Now, look, Pokwala, you are in charge of our cloud service. Please tell us about what? About our subscriptions. We have mentioned about subscription the other time. Because I'm in charge of the cloud services of the organization. I also have the responsibility assigned to me by the organization that I also have what? Billing. I'm also billing administrator. In terms of license, maybe if I'm going us, if I'm extracting the demo, I will show us how that works. So because if I'm not a global administrator, of course I can't add anybody as a user. Let alone assign license to that person. So there are two ways of creating it. We have what we call user. We have create user, and we have what we call uh invite user. In the create user, the person belongs to our organization. Like for instance, now the person shares the email address of my organization. Maybe maybe my email address is popoola at what? xyz.org, right? xyz.org is the domain name of my organization. As a staff of the organization, we'll only use what? Our surname. So maybe Popola is my surname, or maybe my Popola are my initials, Popola IO. All right, because we can have similar what? Surnames. So let me say Popola IO is my name, and the domain name of my organization is what? xyz.org. All right. So now if I use create user, it means that that person is an insider within the organization. But if I go for invite user, I can choose invite user if I want to create what? A user account. Maybe for somebody that has come to do, or what there's what called B2B, that business to business, right? Maybe we have created a business to business opportunity with a client, and that client needs to access some facilities on the cloud. Maybe for instance now, maybe we are partner in business, and there are some services that they need to access. So, and before they can access it, as a global administrator or somebody in charge of creating user accounts, we have to generate a uh, a user account for that outsider, somebody that is not belonging to our organization. This is when we use the second option. Of course, if the person belongs to our organization, we use the first option, which is create user. And if the person does not belong to our organization, we use what? Invite user. Invite user. So now, user profiles, pictures, job, contact info. These are some of the profiles information that we have. Then the user account can be deleted. Deleted users can be restored for 30 days. So if for any need you deleted a user, maybe the person has left your organization, so it can be restored within 30 days, and thereafter it cannot be restored again. So the grace period for deleting is what? 30 days. That's meaning. They sign an audit log information in. There's what we call log, like we have the call log on your phone. This time you call this person. This time the person call you. This time you have your missed call. That is what? That's a log. That's log item. So there's what we call sign in and audit log. Signing has to do with this particular account that's associated with Azure. When does it sign in? When does it sign out? About the audit has to do with when I sign in, what did I do? That's the audit. When I sign in, because of the license that I have authorization, I have the license. Because of the license, what did I do? So that if I do something that I'm not expected to do, they can trace my steps and get me handled that look, Pokola, when you sign in at this particular time, this is what you did. That's about audit log information is available. All right, so that's what we call bug perform account updates. For this, we make use of Azure AD support bug users. For this, Azure AD support bug users and group member updates. I've mentioned this, that if we have 100,000 employees, is it possible that we create user for each one of them? No, that's what we call bug. That's what we call bug. So when we enter the demo, I want to use the last 15 minutes for the demo so that I can quickly take us through. So before I go to that, I have 5 minutes more before I enter the demo. Then some of the bug for the bug account update, we need to make use of what CSV file system, which is we can get in what in Microsoft Excel. We populate all the names and attributes of somebody we want to create a platform for as a user for an identity. So we need to, create a platform. To create a kind of database and just entries, data entries in an Excel, and save it as CSV. Then upload it. That make our bulk upload work better. So must be assigned in as a global administrator or user administrator. So there's what we call global administrator and user administrator. Please get note of it. In the course of this training, we have mentioned about global administrator and user administrator. Global administrator is somebody that is authorized to do almost everything available within the cloud service. Whereby a user administrator is somebody that is being authorized only to administer users, whether group users or what, whether group users or individual users. That's about user administrator. But for global administrator, a global administrator does more than what a user administrator can do. And the other one that I've mentioned that is not here is about what billing administrator. Billing administrator, maybe in charge of our what in terms of our subscriptions and what have you. All right, so this is how we can create this information about what? This is information about group account. That in group account, we have two types of things that we do under group account. There's what we call group type. We have two types of group type. We have security groups and we have Microsoft 365 group. And under assignment tab. For instance, now under group, you can say, okay, HR group. Maybe the department is an HR. We can say, okay, now everybody that belongs to what? Everybody that belongs to everybody that belongs to HR, all staff of HR department, they belong to this. That's about what group account. So now we can now assign what we call assignment type. Whether we have assigned, we have dynamic user, whether we have dynamic device, and what have you. All right, so they assign licenses to users and groups. Microsoft Azure is a cloud service that provides many built-in this and that. So majority of the operations that we enjoy, majority of the facilities in terms of features that we enjoy in Azure has to do with a P1 on P2 license. Yes, it has to do with, because those are the premium versions. Those are the premium subscriptions that we get what? We get P1 and P2. So because that is where majority of functionality, if you can remember the difference between the subscription that I've mentioned the other time, we have what? We have free service. We have what? Microsoft 365 apps. We have what? We have P1. And we have the last one, which is what? Which is P2. You can remember some of the things that you can benefit in one that are not available in the other. So these are the kind of additional services that you can have under O365. That is Office 365 paid cloud service. So many things. You can fill license plans and plan details. You can set the usage locations parameter. You can assign license to users and groups. You can change license plans for users and group. You can remove a license. Yes, you can remove a license. So there's what we call administrative units, which is part of the overview in the Azure Active Directory. You get to know more when we have this. So let me take us to a demo where we get more about the user account and about what group account. All right. So if you go online too through www.docs.microsoft.com/learn, you can see a lot of practical things that you can that you can get out of it. So now we have a lab which is has to do with manage Azure Active Directory identity. Let me quickly take us through the lab. In a minute, let me go to my browser. Um, I will share my browser in a moment. Um, okay, let me quickly share my browser. Um, just a minute. Share. Let me quickly share. It is Chrome. It is Azure. Please confirm you can see my my browser. Can you see my browser?
Yes, we can.
Oh, that's fine. All right, so this is my browser, and the best way to go to Azure is to go to the browser and type Azure, or we write Porter. No, I mentioned porter.azure.com. That is the platform. Porter.azure.com. Every operation you want to do in Azure, this is where you start from. And mind you, I've mentioned that during the course of the technical know-how in discussing the technical background. I've mentioned that, look, we have free service. There is what we call free service that is what? That is into Azure Cloud Service. And that has limitations. You can remember, if you can remember, just only 4 items you can do. Just only 4 items. Whereby in the what? Is O365, Office 365, we can do like 6, and the increase of features increases in terms of P1 and what up to P2. All right, so if I just click on this porter.azure.com, so it take me to Azure. Now limited or no access, I'm not interested in this. Now this one is telling me that if you can see this one is about a restricted tenant. Can you say restricted tenant? Because it is a free service. You can see that it is what? Pokwala.io@outlook.com. Restricted tenant, because what? It is a free service. Now, let me take you to one that is not a free service. This is an organization that I work for, and this is my email address. Like I was saying the other time, this is the domain. This is the domain name of the organization. And in that organization, the culture is that you must have your first name dot your what? Your surname to have access to the facilities of the organization. Let me log in and let us see what are available. In the case of this one make use of what? This one make use of MFA, multi-factor authentication. That, look, as one of the conditions, they call it what? Conditional access. Conditional what? Access. That for the status of the work that I do in the organization, whoever, for me, that I want to have access, whenever I want to have access to that organization, I must do MFA. That is, I must verify my phone number. Can you see that? So if I click on this one now, that one will now send a code to my phone number that, look, is it popular that we know that has this phone number, that we send this code to his phone number? Is it the one that want to enter this organization facility? If I didn't get this code, I can't access it. That's the meaning. Or if I get it and I don't insert it correctly, I'll still be denied. All right. So because because my phone is off because of this training, I may not be able to switch it on to have this code. Let me try to use another. Let me try to use another email. Let me make use of this. Let me make use of this, because for me to make use of this organizational, I have to on my phone, then inside the code before I can, show you so many things. Now this one is personal to me too. I use this one majorly for trainings. And this is an interface. It could have been better. I make use of this because because I'm a global administrator here. I can show you so many things, and I didn't get permission from the organization, so I may not be able to do that because there's a need for data privacy. So of course I can't show you some of the details of the organizations that you have learned so much from this demo if I'm able to display this, but it's against the rule of the organization. Let me quickly take us through this. Now, what's our interest? Our interest is about Azure Active Directly. So the first thing that we need to do, let me switch my directory to default. Where's my default? Okay, default directory. All right. Now from this, the idea is just the same. It's just that the license I have here. Oh, this one is also asking about authorization. Oh, let me go back. The challenge is that my phone is off. If I have to go and on it, it may take time, and we don't have so much time to go. So let me just make use of this. So I have subscription credits 100. That's fine. All right. So the idea is that let me go to the home page. This is just the home page. What do I want to demonstrate? I want to demonstrate how we can achieve two objectives that we have dealt with today. The first objective is how to configure Active Directly, and second one is how to configure user and group accounts. Now, for us to have access to Azure Active Directory, I can just type Azure Active. Can you see? As I write Azure Active, the next one just came up. That is Azure Active Directory. By the time I enter Azure Active Directory, can you now see some of the facilities that we have here? We have what we call user. This is where I had user one by one. If I'm a global administrator, this is where I assign roles as what? As an administrator. And yes.
Hello, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes.
We can't see that part of the screen you're showing.
This screen?
Yes.
Ben, I'm showing the entire screen. Oh.
Okay, but it's still just showing your login.
My login? Okay, let me try to share it again.
All right, let me
share it again. Thank you for that. Let me go to the stream, the share, the Chrome. Okay. You should be fine by now. Are you fine? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Can you see the Azure portal?
Yes.
Okay, let me start again. The idea is that we are looking for Azure Directory. So we go to the search bar. This is the search bar. I type Azure Active. By the time I type Azure Active, the third one just came up by default, which is what? Directory, which is our interest for identity management. Now that I'm here, these are the things that I can do in the Azure Active Directory. I can manage what? Can you manage? I can manage users. I can manage groups. I can assign roles as administrator. This is administrative unit that we talked about the other time. I can manage devices, endpoint devices. I can manage app registration. I can do identity governance. I can do so many things. See licenses. There are different licenses that are available. This was Azure AD Connect. This Azure AD Connect has to do with what? With hybrid. It has to do with hybrid. And what does hybrid does? The other time, the first diagram that I shown to us, we had what? We had local, on-prem. We have applications available on-prem. That is on premises. We also have applications available on what? In the cloud. Now, for us to now bridge the gap of what is on the what? On-prem and the cloud. Now we now make use of what we call Azure Active Directory Connect. That's another discussion for another day, which is very, very broad. Now, under that, please take note. We have the manage, we have under manage, we have manage under manage, we have a lot of things. Then under monitor, we have what we call sign-in log. We mentioned about sign-in log the other time, that you have access to the organization when you do signing. There's also what we call audit log. In the audit log, when you sign, what did you do? We want to monitor everything that you do, so that there will be no I am not the one that did this. If you are the one that does not this, did you sign this time around? Yes, you sign it. What were the things that you did? You should be able to tell us. Now, this is what we now know as what? Under basic information. Can you see we have what? Name, code learn up. How many users? There are 322 users. Users can now be attributed to what? User accounts. Maybe the organization now is what? There was a project I did with this code learners up, and we were just 322 people that were there. So each one of us, they created an account for us. And this is what we call tenant. This is tenant ID. We can copy it, and that's what 11 groups. This is primary domain. So for each of the domain, it is attributed to what? To the Microsoft. This is the domain address dot the Microsoft web address. And this is license. License is what? Azure free. So now that is Azure free, there's a limitation to what I can do. So if I sign in through the first one, which has to do with organization, you can see that one is P2. That's the subscription level is what? Is P2. And I am an administrator at that level. So I can show you, I can do so many things that people ordinarily will not be able to do. Now, these are the things that I'm also showing us, that my name is this. Fill my role. What is my role? The user role. The user role is what? No directory roles has been assigned. Can you see that? Under Kukwala, now this one is not user. Can you see that from the overview, we went to what? We went to user. And my user is what? Is Popular IO. This is my profile. Profile has to give information about maybe my picture, my first name, my department, what are the things that I'm assigned to. Can you see job information? This one is about a user. Job information, my job title, my department, my line managers. What are the things that I can do? What are the things I cannot do? What are the licenses I have? Then assign role. I come to assign role. This is where to know if any role has been assigned to me. As at now, I have not been assigned any role. So, for instance, if I have been assigned any role, like I am a global administrator somewhere, I am a billing administrator somewhere, it would have been shown here. All right. So these are the licenses. These are different licenses that are available. For this, because it is free, you cannot see license. Can you see the limitations? This one is about what? The devices, endpoint devices. Which of devices has been connected? Which Coca-Cola devices has been connected? Maybe I've registered my laptop. Maybe I've registered my desktop. Maybe I've registered my palm top. Maybe I've registered any devices that I have. This is where I do endpoint configuration. This is authentication method. Because it is free service, there's a limitation to what I can achieve. Now, for signing, this is signing log for this individual. If I'm a global administrator, I can access everything that this particular person has done. Now, can you see that this is time that I've signed in? I sign in at 3:51. This is 3:51. Conditional access not applied. Conditional access has to do. Yes.
Oh, it's almost time to round up. Let's round up now.
Just give me like 2 minutes. Let me just
All
give
right.
me like 2 minutes.
So,
Let me
all right.
let me go back to the let me go back here. Then we are talking about what? Configure Azure Active Directory and configure user and group accounts. Now I've talked about user, which is individual. This is about group. This is about group. And in group, you can have all groups that we have, whether we have deleted any group in the past, whether there is a problem with any group, whether there are privileges that we have, whether there are bulk operation results, and a whole lot of this is about new support requests. This is where you can go to Microsoft. if you have any challenges as an IT administrator of your organization, because the idea is that participants of this training, they are coming to become what? Cloud administrators or cloud engineer. We call them cloud engineer. At the end of this training, people that are versatile in using Azure Cloud Service through the AZ-104, they are qualified to, with their practical experience, they are qualified to become what? Cloud engineer. So if you are aiming to become a cloud engineer, this is a right path for you to follow up. If you are also dreaming to become what? Cloud support service. This is also part of what? Of the route for you to take note. So it is my pleasure that this is how far that we can go. I have so many things to tell us. I have so many things to show to us, but we have a constraint of the time. So this is how far we are able to go. I'm very sure that in the subsequent, this is just the beginning. I'm sure we have a lot of lineup of activities that we get to know most of the things that we need to know as a cloud service engineer or cloud service support person. Thank you so much for having
Thank you,
me.
Mr. Pokwala. That was a very, very enlightening
Yeah.
session. Thank you for taking us
Yes.
through the Azure Identity platform. And I'm sure that we all learned. I don't know, anybody with any questions before we end
If you have
the session?
questions, maybe
Okay.
around 1, 2.
Yes, I think we have a question on what is administrative unit used for? That's the question.
The administrative.
So I think that's on the.
Okay, now because of the time, let me quickly share to us two important links that we can get more details, because I mean, I have the time to okay, somebody at the back end should help me to drop these links so that the people can have access to it. There are just two important links. One is about Active Directory, and the second one is about the terminologies, so they will get to know more about it. For my
you can use this link.
LinkedIn profile. Let me quickly drop it. Yes, any other question before we are done?
I think that's the only question we have for now. That's the only question we have for now. Yes.
That's my link. That's my LinkedIn profile. We can get connected for questions, for advice on how to move forward.
All right. Thank you so much, sir. And,
thank you for having me.
Right.
Thank you.
Let's see.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have Mr. Pokwala's LinkedIn profile and the links to the question that was asked. Hopefully, but if you need more information, you can reach him on LinkedIn. I'm sure we'll be happy to answer.
Yeah, definitely. I'm available.
Yeah.
It is my
All right.
pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, thank you so much.
That has brought us to the end of today's session on Azure Identity, and please let's get ready for next week's session. Like we said, we've started the series on Azure Administration, so let's get ready for the next session. I'm sure it's going to be enlightening like this one, and we get to learn a lot. So see you next week.
Definitely.
And thank you for joining the session today.
Thank you. So
Bye.
I'm wearing my tag. For the Data Fest.
Data Fest. So, hope you're enjoying the program.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Thanks so much, Damilola.
All right.
Thank you for having me.
All right.
Bye bye. Yeah. Bye bye. Yeah.